Title: Mastering Podcast Advertising and Sponsorships, Unlocking the Power of Audio Marketing. Introduction: Welcome to the Mastering Podcast Advertising and Sponsorships Masterclass. In this comprehensive course, we will explore the world of podcast advertising and sponsorships, and how they can be leveraged to effectively promote your brand, reach your target audience, and drive business growth. Podcasts have emerged as a powerful medium for content consumption, offering a unique opportunity to connect with engaged listeners in a highly personal and intimate way. In this masterclass, we will guide you through the process of planning, executing, and optimizing successful podcast advertising and sponsorship campaigns that resonate with your audience and deliver measurable results. Get ready to harness the potential of podcasting to elevate your brand and drive meaningful engagement. Module 1: Understanding the benefits of podcast advertising and sponsorships, exploring the advantages of podcast advertising and sponsorships as an effective marketing channel, recognizing the rise of podcast consumption and its impact on brand awareness and customer loyalty, analyzing successful case studies and their impact on audience reach and business growth. Module 2: Identifying the right podcasts for your brand, defining your target audience and understanding their podcast listening habits, conducting research and analysis to identify relevant and popular podcasts in your niche. Evaluating podcasts based on audience demographics, engagement metrics, and alignment with your brand values. Module 3: Crafting compelling podcast ads, understanding the different types of podcast ads, including host-read, pre-roll, mid-roll, and post-roll ads, developing ad scripts that resonate with the podcast's audience and align with your brand messaging, leveraging storytelling techniques and authentic delivery to captivate listeners. Module 4: Negotiating podcast sponsorships and partnerships, establishing relationships with podcast hosts and networks for potential sponsorships, understanding the various sponsorship options, such as show sponsorships, episode sponsorships, or segment sponsorships, negotiating terms, pricing, and deliverables to ensure a mutually beneficial partnership. Module 5: Measuring and tracking podcast advertising performance, defining key performance indicators, KPIs, to measure the success of your podcast advertising campaigns, utilizing podcast analytics and tracking tools to monitor listener engagement and ad performance, analyzing conversion rates, website traffic, and other metrics to gauge the impact of your podcast ads. Module 6: Developing effective podcast sponsorship strategies, creating engaging sponsorship messages that seamlessly integrate with the podcast's content, leveraging host endorsements and personal anecdotes to build trust and credibility. Crafting unique offers and promo codes to track sponsorship-driven conversions. Module 7: Creating engaging podcast episodes and segments, collaborating with podcast hosts to create sponsored content that aligns with the podcast's format and audience interests, providing value-added insights, tips, or exclusive offers to engage listeners and showcase your expertise. Balancing promotional messages with entertaining and informative content to maintain listener engagement. Module 8: Leveraging dynamic ad insertion and targeted messaging, exploring the use of dynamic ad insertion to deliver tailored ads to different listener segments, targeting specific audience demographics, interests, or geographic locations with customized ad messaging, optimizing ad delivery and frequency to maximize impact without overwhelming listeners. Module 9: Leveraging podcast guest appearances for brand exposure, identifying opportunities to appear as a guest on relevant podcasts to promote your brand, developing talking points and value-added content to engage the podcast's audience, utilizing podcast guest appearances to drive brand awareness and generate qualified leads. Module 10: Building relationships with podcasters and listeners, engaging with podcast hosts and listeners through social media, email marketing, and other channels, providing value-added content such as exclusive discounts, resources, or bonus episodes for podcast listeners, encouraging listener feedback, reviews, and engagement to foster a sense of community, collaborating with podcasters and their audience to co-create content and develop loyal brand advocates. Module 11. Scaling and expanding podcast advertising efforts. Scaling podcast advertising campaigns by targeting additional relevant podcasts and audiences. Exploring opportunities for cross-promotion and partnerships with other brands or podcasts. Testing and optimizing ad creative, messaging, and targeting strategies for maximum effectiveness. Module 12. Podcast advertising case studies and best practices, analyzing successful podcast advertising and sponsorship campaigns across different industries. Learning from real-world case studies and their strategies for driving brand growth, extracting key takeaways and best practices for optimizing podcast advertising efforts. Module 13. Compliance and legal considerations, understanding advertising regulations and guidelines specific to podcasting, ensuring compliance with disclosures, endorsements, and sponsor identification requirements. Protecting your brand and intellectual property rights in podcast advertising agreements. Module 14. Budgeting and ROI analysis for podcast advertising, setting realistic budgets for podcast advertising and sponsorships based on your marketing goals, calculating return on investment, ROI, and tracking the impact of podcast advertising on business metrics. Adjusting and optimizing budgets based on performance and business growth objectives. Module 15. Future trends and innovations in podcast advertising, staying informed about the evolving landscape of podcasting and advertising opportunities, exploring emerging technologies such as programmatic advertising, dynamic ad insertion, and targeted listener segments, anticipating and adapting to future trends to stay ahead of the competition. Conclusion: congratulations on completing the Mastering Podcast Advertising and Sponsorships Masterclass. By mastering the art of podcast advertising and sponsorships, you are now equipped to effectively promote your brand, engage with your target audience, and drive business growth. Remember to identify the right podcasts for your brand, craft compelling ads, negotiate strategic sponsorships, measure performance, and build meaningful relationships with podcasters and listeners. Utilize the power of podcasting as a unique and intimate medium to connect with your audience authentically. Continuously evaluate and optimize your podcast advertising and sponsorship strategies, leveraging analytics and industry best practices to achieve your marketing goals. Stay informed about the latest trends and innovations in podcast advertising, adapting your approach to stay ahead of the competition. Thank you for joining the Mastering Podcast Advertising and Sponsorships Masterclass. Best of luck as you implement these strategies to elevate your brand, engage with your audience, and achieve remarkable results through podcast advertising and sponsorships.